What's going on, guys? This is Carlos with the Progress Garage. So hopefully you guys been good. I know I've been posting on Instagram pictures, some videos. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure you follow me on Instagram. Is at the Progress Garage on IG, and make sure you subscribe to this channel. Put that notification on so you can get notified when the videos get posted. But this Honda Civic, so the initial issue was a transmission, a whole big ordeal with the axles, transmission, clutch. So we went ahead and did all that project and got it all squared away. Test drove it, drove good, shifted good, everything was going well until that idle came into play. So I know if you have worked on Hondas or you own a Honda, you probably experienced this issue once before, or if you have not, that's good. But this video right here is going to go ahead and help you if you do experience that idle control valve issue or that idle issue. But for this Honda Civic, so it is a D16 Y8 VTEC. But I'm pretty sure it's gonna be helpful for B series and D series. And so if you guys have any idle issues with Honda Civics or Integras, make sure you lock in, tap in, comment, subscribe, share it to somebody that might be having that issue. So this Honda Civic, all of a sudden it just started, the idling just started going crazy from like 1,000, I would say 1,500. It would go all the way to 2,000, sometimes a little bit higher, and come back down. So it would go boom, 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 you know, that idling. And at times it would speed up. It would just go boom, 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 like kind of like a two-step, you know, not really, but and I would be sitting at a light, and it's kind of embarrassing at times, you know, when you're just sitting at the red light, especially if you have an exhaust or your car is loud as it is. You could hear that idling, boom, 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 you know. So, and once it started going, it would kind of go away. But as soon as I started decreasing the speed, it would kind of boggle or choke, but it wouldn't shut off or anything like that. It would just kind of like boom, boom, you know, and did that. So I'm like, you know what? Let me see what's going on. So I started looking up on internet, started looking on YouTube what it could be, and everything led me to either a vacuum leak, the coolant, idle control valve, or a bad computer. So I'm like, you know what? Let's go ahead and see the cheapest thing first. Plus, I need to do it. I went ahead and flushed out the coolant. Because what I was reading is that if you have bubbles in the coolant, or there's air in the coolant and running through a system, that could actually take effect because it runs through the idle control valve. So I'm like, all right. So I went ahead and flushed out the coolant. There was coolant in there, but it kind of looked more like water. So I went ahead and flushed out the coolant and put actual coolant, ran it through the radiator and flushed it out. Bleed out the air pockets and whatnot, and made sure that there was sufficient coolant in the system, which there was. I went ahead and turned it on, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Turned it on, and it was doing the exact same thing. So at the beginning, at cold start, it wouldn't do it. As soon as it started to get to operating temperature, that's when it would start to surge or idle kind of drastically. Then I started looking into the hoses just to make sure that there was any leaks in the hoses or whatnot. Everything looked good. I'm like, oh, you know what? It was probably that what's called I deleted the power steering. And I believe the power steering pump has a vacuum hose, and I'm like, man, it was probably that. I went ahead and looked it up, and no, it was probably sealed. Everything was sealed. Yeah, and from that point, I was kind of like on a standstill. I went ahead and took out the throttle body, took out the idle control valve, cleaned it up with some parts cleaner. That's what I recommend. If you haven't done that, make sure you do it. Your car is gonna thank you. Even if that's not the issue, make sure you take it out once in a while. You know, once every a year or two, or whatnot. It depends on how much you drive that car, and the age of the condition and the age of the car. But yeah, I went ahead and took out that idle control valve, cleaned it up, parts cleaner and everything. Make sure the other sensors were nice and secure, the sensors nice and clean and everything. So, and put it on, and it wasn't it. I'm like, oh man, and then I got a procedure process that when you turn on the car, let it warm up and remove the clip on the idle control valve. Remove it, and if it like settles down, then it's probably your idle control valve. Not necessarily. So it could be, but not necessarily. So I went ahead and tried that. I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and order this part. But I'm like, you know what? I don't know. This idle control valve looks pretty new. So let me go ahead and keep going on to the other processes, the other procedures. So I went ahead and clipped that sensor back on. Then I ran into the video where you could check for vacuum leaks with carb cleaner while the car is running. You could do that, but it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because obviously the vehicle is running, there's spark, and if you're putting some carb cleaner, it could potentially, catch on fire, which I'm like, I don't want to do that, especially the car in my garage, catch everything up in flames. So I didn't want to go ahead and do that. I'm like, okay, let's see if there's other methods that I could do in order to actually find these vacuum leaks, if there is any. So I came upon this video, and it was a crazy video, meaning in a good way. So this guy created a smoker with Harbor Freight parts and like a cigar or something like that. And I'm like, you know what, that could possibly work. But since I don't smoke or I don't do any of that, I went ahead and I'm like, okay, what can I actually put on there instead of a cigarette? So what I came up with something like this. So I did this. It's just a little container. I put a hole on here, and this is some just clear tubing that you could get at Home Depot or Lowe's. Same thing on top. I went ahead and put a hole on there, put some tape on there, and inside I went ahead and put I cut up a can and put it inside. That way the flame is not directly on the plastic, because obviously it would melt. So inside of the cut up can, I put a piece of paper. So I lit it up, and it started to smolder, started to smoke. So once it had a nice flame, I put it inside and quickly closed up the container. And from there, I put this part of the hose, which is, you could either do the top one or the bottom one, doesn't really matter, as long as you put one of these hoses onto one of the vacuum hoses to the intake manifold. So once you actually do that, what happens is then it creates a pocket of smoke. All in here is going to be filled with smoke, right? So the other end, you just blow on it. So pushing the air into your intake manifold. So once your intake manifold, you might have to do that process a couple of times, because sometimes you'll extinguish the actual paper, and you have to get nice, a lot of smoke in there. So once you get a lot of smoke and you push it in, then you'll kind of stop and start to look at the intake manifold and see exactly where you start to see smoke. And luckily, it's a great invention. This guy that actually did it, I give you the credit. Hats off to you. But I went ahead and did my own. This right here maybe could cost you like $2 or $3 to make, and it saved me hundreds of dollars. Because I know the out of control valve is like $200 right off the bat. So once I did that process and I started to see smoke coming from the actual intake manifold where it actually attaches to the head, I'm like, dang, like what's going on? And I started to see a bigger when I looked at it closely, then I saw a bigger gap. I'm like, okay, so it's probably the gasket. So I went ahead and took out the intake manifold. When I took out the intake manifold, I didn't took off any of the lines or the sensors or anything like that. I just started to unbolt the intake manifold. Disclaimer: so if you do that, your coolant is gonna come out. It's gonna flush out. So be prepared. So what I recommend is flush out your coolant first. Once you remove your intake manifold, it should be empty and it won't go all over the place, because if you start to remove your intake manifold without flushing your coolant, it's just gonna be all over your floor, all over your car. And just to give you a heads up, so I went ahead and did that, and yes, it was partially all over my floor, but luckily I was able to catch it on time, or somewhat. But this thing this thing saved me a few $100s. Let me tell you. It's something that I would have not taught of myself, but YouTube, the internet, definitely could help you out, and you could always make it to your way and to your liking, and create something for maybe somebody else. But definitely this definitely worked. Blew in some smoke into the car, and found the leak. But the reason why it was actually leaking, why there was a gap, let me show you. So normally you're only supposed to have one gasket. This car had 3 gaskets in one. So, and obviously the conditions of it, it's pretty bad. They're all worn out. One of them was a metal. I'm assuming high performance. I'm not sure, but one of them was a metal. The other ones were just regular gaskets. So when I went ahead and saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness. So whenever you buy a car that's swapped or somebody has done work to it, don't think that everything is perfect in that car. Sometimes they try to just put parts together and just sell them. Obviously cars like this, there's always parts that being removed, put on. They're project cars, so it's one of those things that, hey, it gave me something to do and something to learn and something to pass on to somebody else that might be having the same issue. So as I look at it in the positive way, it happened to me, that way it doesn't have to happen to somebody else. So with that being said, I went ahead and bought a gasket at AutoZone for like $10. Put on the gasket, put on the intake manifold. Oh, before that though, I made sure that on the head side and on the intake side, there wasn't any gaskets that had been melted on there. It was nice and clean surface. And so with the razor blade, I went ahead and cut out all the remaining gasket off of the plates of the intake and on the head side, just to make sure that once those two parts sandwich the gasket, it would be a nice closed seal. So once I did that, made sure it was nice and clean, I went ahead and put on the new gasket. I'm telling you, it was like 10 bucks at AutoZone, and bolted it down. Turn on then I went ahead and put coolant, bled out the coolant, turned on the car, and boom, warmed up the car, and it was idling perfect. Let me tell you, it was idling perfect. I've never seen this car ever since I owned it idle that good. It was actually idling at like 800 to 1,000. It was nice and smooth. Motor was like it wasn't even vibrating or anything. So I'm like, dang, something so simple could cause such a big headache. But what I want to go ahead and get to is that sometimes you overthink stuff, and it can be just something so small. You know, I was already thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take it to a mechanic, I'm gonna take it to somebody with more experience. But it took for me to actually look into it, take a break, ponder about it, look on the internet for more insight, and then come back to it. That's what it took. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to, take a break, go do something else, get your mind off of the car, and go do something else, and just go ahead and tackle it again, either the next day or later on in the day. Like I was telling you guys, something so in total with the gasket in this thing, it's probably, I would say maybe like less than $15. Less than $15 fix the idle issue. I was reading that there's been cases where you buy the whole idle control valve, and that was not the case. And idle control valves, they're pretty expensive. They can range anywhere from $150 all the way to like $250. So try this method. If you're having issues, obviously do your part. Flush out the coolant, clean out your idle control valve. Those are things that you're still gonna have to do regardless, just to make sure your car is satisfied, just to make sure that your car is actually running good in the summertime or in hot weather. You're gonna have to do it. So tackle the cooling, tackle the idle control valve, clean all the sensors around, clean the throttle body, because that was one of the things that when I did remove the throttle body, I did see a lot of carbon buildup, a lot of grease buildup. So I got some parts cleaner, cleaned that up, and got all that junk out. And I don't want to say I left it brand new, but I did leave it in a better condition than it was. But $15 it took for me to actually get this car back within idle specs. So definitely, if you want more information, or you want me to help you make this, you could say car smoker, I could definitely help you out. Let me know, send me a message, comment on this video, but let me know. Let's get these cars running back on the road. So yeah, guys, this issue could have definitely broken my head a bit, trying to figure out exactly what was going on with this issue. But a simple fix that only cost me, I would say, $15. I was able to repair the gasket and get this Honda back on the road and idling how it's supposed to. So if you guys are having the same issue where it's just idling like crazy, it would just stay at 1,500, and from 1,500 it would rev up to 2,000 and a little, sometimes a little bit more. And try doing this method. You know, try smoking out your intake manifold while the car is off with this part that I just showed you earlier, this smoker right here. Just go ahead and try it out. You don't lose anything. You just never know. It might be a broken hose. It might be a gasket that's failing. It might be that it's loose or whatnot. You know, go the cheapest way first, unless you for sure know that it is that out of control valve, because I know that out of control valves are expensive. But yeah, this is it right here. And it's right there. So it is a D16 Y8 VTEC. That's the engine right there. You know, I still got to do a little bit more cleaning, possibly wire tucking, you know, a lot more stuff. But obviously this is a project car. Ultimately, my end goal is putting a K-Series in there with a turbo, but keeping it as a daily driver. So that's the goal. And for now, we'll keep this D16 Y8, keep it on there, work on it, you know, learn from it, and possibly pass it on to somebody else later down in the future. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just go ahead and comment or DM me. Subscribe to my channel, put that notification on so you can get notified when those videos posted up, or even share it to somebody that might be having that same issue. So let's go ahead and help each other out. See you guys on the next one.